Okay, and we're live. So today we got a great guest for you. It's Kevin Avery from up in Lindsay. He's known as the farm specialist. So Kevin, why don't you tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
My name's Kevin Avery, and I have been in the business 20 years as of March. This year will be 20 years. And our team has been known for farms. It was mainly my specialty, and then we grew out of that into a team. And we specialize in farms and rural-type properties around city Kawartha Lakes and stretching over into Peterborough County a little bit and towards Newmarket.
So how much would you say of your business comes from doing farms then?
I would say about 50% of our business is farms and rural-type property.
Okay, so why don't you tell people
Not
what...
all farmers buying them. Actually, quite a few people out of the city buy them as weekend getaways. So
okay.
It's not all just farmers, but
Right.
They're buying a lifestyle choice.
Yep. So what made you get into that? Just so people can get a good understanding of why that's your specialty.
I grew up around farms and loved them. And actually, when I got into this business, one of my mentors was a fellow named John White, and he was our broker back in those days when I was at Remax and then later Royal LePage. But he was very focused on farms in his early part of his career, but he told me to pick something that I'm passionate about and that I like doing, and that he promised me if I did that I would flourish and it wouldn't feel that much like work to me.
And do you agree now after 20
was
years?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I can honestly say, I love what I do, and it doesn't feel like work most days. Just the odd day.
We're in real estate, so there's obviously going to be those days. What would you say that differentiates you from just an average real estate agent then?
I think if you're a realtor that focuses just on condos or just on in-town properties, you maybe have a lot smaller geographic area, so the market's much smaller that you have to pay attention to. For us, we cover a geographic area basically from Campbellford down to the lakeshore, maybe around Brighton, and all the way north to maybe Kinmount, and then as far west as Newmarket, even a little past Newmarket from time to time.
Okay.
So you've got about 4 or 5 different boards that you have to kind of pay attention to.
Right.
And, you've got a lot of different markets that, are moving at different paces,
Yeah.
So I think you need to pay more attention to, the different areas versus if you're just geographically in one small area,
Yeah. So for the listeners, what would you say is the average price point for the farms that you're working with then?
I would say in the $500,000 range.
Okay. And now versus the residential side, what would you say is the average price for residential in the area? Just for
in our market, I'd say $250, $260.
Okay, so you're at a higher price, so which is good for you.
Yeah, agents that make comparable dollars to what we do 2 to 3 times the deals that we do, right?
Right.
So that's a lot more showings, a lot more ads in the paper, if you will, on the listing side, a lot more personalities to deal with,
Yep. Now,
that's what I've always liked.
Do you find
one of our deals is... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Keep going.
I just said, one of our deals often equals 2 or 3 normal residential deals, and like I said, about half of our business is still made up. The other half of our business, if you will, would be made up of residential, condos, waterfront,
Yep.
a bit of commercial.
So with the farms, do you find you attract a certain type of clientele or personality type that you can work with?
Yes, for me, I've never been able to cold call or prospect Others have done very, very well at it,
Yep.
and I commend them. But for me, I kind of stumbled upon it. My brokers would tell me that you need to make 100 phone calls a day, and out of that you're going to get 10 leads, and then you're going to get one,
Yep.
And I tried it, and I just couldn't handle that many no's in a day. And so I used to go, and I would hide at the local stockyards or farm sales or where farmers hang out.
Right.
I'd go for coffee in the mornings at the diner where the farmers all go.
Yep.
And you become one of them. And then I found, for me, I was just always top of mind when they thought about real estate. They knew that they'd see me 2 to 3 times a week, some of these people. So,
Right.
It never entered their minds probably to call anybody else because they knew they'd see me at the coffee shop or at the farm sale.
Yep.
So
And
it worked. It worked. It was basically a marketing ploy, I guess.
Yep.
I didn't realize at the time. I thought I was just hiding from the work, but it found me.
Which is good. So now that
Yeah.
you're in full production, what kind of numbers are you guys doing then, if you want to share that?
Like from an end point
yeah.
of view,
Yep.
or
Yeah.
like I total. I think our high water mark was a couple of years ago, and we had 63 or 4 ends.
Okay. So
Had a fairly large team. I found for my market, I've shrunk it back. There's just 3 of us on the team right now.
okay.
Because as people moved on, I wasn't able to get people that weren't used to farms, didn't grow up around it. I couldn't get them speaking and thinking the way I do,
Right.
and they didn't blend with. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
It was like a square peg in a round hole, if you will.
Yep.
And I found, with my life has gone through a few changes, divorce-wise and all. So
Yep.
my life needed to get a bit simpler.
Yep.
We had a big team at one point, but I'd say like this year, there's the 2 main players are Kate and I, and we have a fellow named Ed that does a bit as well. But the main ones are Kate and I, and we would do combined this year probably in that 35 to 40 end range.
Okay. Now, for those people who don't know, actually, when I first got my license, I went to you, and you wanted to hire me.
Yep.
I didn't end up working with you.
Yeah.
But we've stayed in contact ever since. So, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
been interesting to watch you and your career and watch where you go with the team and stuff.
That's funny, like I've gone to a lot of team building events, but I think the team is maybe a more accepted in the urban areas.
Right.
For my rural clients, like I found that I was getting a lot of pushback where people were saying, "Well, I called Kevin, but I didn't get him."
Right.
I think you don't get that in the urban setting. They don't, as long as they're getting the service they want. But my trouble is people couldn't talk intelligently about the farms, right? Like,
Right.
And I think the reason I'm good at selling farms is I'm actually daydreaming about what they have. Like I say, oh, I'd love to have that barn, or
Yeah.
I'd love to have that land, or
Yeah.
Where I see it, agents come out of the city all the time to show our farms, and they go, oh, it smells, it's dirty. You
Yeah.
want me to walk all the way back to that fence line? Like, it's a different mentality,
Yeah.
Where I go to the city and I think, how can I even find a parking spot here?
So,
I think that's why I'm good at it, in that world,
yeah, and that's totally important, and that's with the purpose of this podcast is, again, to help people find what they're good at, what they love, and what they're passionate about, and make it their business, and you've done a good job, for sure, at doing that. So, if you're looking back at your business over the last 20 years, what would you say was the biggest breakthrough for you with your career?
There was a few things. I guess, when you realize that moment, when you realize that, you're doing something that pays very well, and you seem to be good at, and you're passionate about, and people respond to that. Like, the biggest thing was when I realized I went to a seminar, and I unfortunately can't remember, passionately about what you're selling, and you're excited, that will transfer to your buyer, because, you know, they don't want to buy something from someone that's monotone and not that into it. So when I started really practicing that and seeing people respond to it, it made me more confident. And then every deal you do, and then I think if you could, when you kind of hone that in and you can speak confidently but maybe not cocky, in our market anyways, they respond to that, you know.
Yep.
And they feel like, hey, you know, this person knows what they're doing, and I'm not going to have any surprises, because there's a way more to think about when you buy a farm than there is when you buy a house in
Right.
town, you know. There's tons of variables, and it can cost you tens of thousands of dollars if you're not educated to what you're buying.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize how much it is.
People.
Even just land, I tell people, like, I'd rather sell a house than
You know,
just
on your
land
average-
itself.
Yeah, like for us, like there's the variables, you know, there could be tile drainage loans that someone has on the farm that aren't paid off that will get stuck with a new buyer. Like you've got well problems, you've got septic problems, you know,
Yep.
or could have, you know.
Yep.
There's just a million things to think about that are relevant. And, you know, if people, it'd be no different than me going in.
I think we lost you there. Okay, we got disconnected there, so we're back again. So we were just discussing some of the issues that you have when potentially buying a farm. Yeah, so what would you say is the biggest downfall for that then, or the biggest issue that people run into with buying a farm?
There can be a few, there can be hidden problems with wells, septics, tile drain loans, and things like that that can come back and cost the buyer tens of thousands if they're not careful. There can be fence line disputes, you know, with a neighbor that haven't been disclosed, or, you know, so there can be some big, you know, ramifications if people aren't aware of what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones that people don't realize, and it's more so the buyer that would come out of the city that wants the 1800s brick house up on top of the hill with lots of view, and what happens is they're usually back a great big long laneway, and the hydro poles getting to that house most times will belong to the seller.
Right.
Or in the future it'll be the buyer. And, you know, in a windstorm or something, if they start breaking off, people can find out they could have somewhere between a $10,000 and $30,000 expense.
Right.
So you want to know going into it, do I own these posts? Am I responsible, or is Hydro One responsible, you know?
Yep.
That's one that people run into often.
So for attracting business, would you say most of your business is buyers or sellers then? Or what would you say the split would be?
50-50.
Okay.
50. We do get a lot of sellers. We do double end a lot nowadays, but we attract a lot of buyers to our listings. But, you know, I think it goes hand in hand. Like, you get listings because you've got lots of buyers, but, you know, those listings attract more buyers, right? The
Yep.
inventory.
Yep.
About 1998, probably, I bought the name CanadaFarms.com.
Yep.
And it's helped me over the years attract some European and overseas buyers. You know, give you a bit better reach for, because I mean, you don't always find a buyer within 5 miles of the property. You know.
Right.
They're coming a lot farther away.
So do you connect with other agents who do farms at all across
Yep.
Canada or other areas?
Yep. There's business. We had some farmers locally here. They were very old, and they had gone out to BC to work when they were, I guess, basically back in the Depression. And these two brothers, they said, if you would keep working through the end of your agreement, the year that they were supposed to work, would give you this piece of land.
Mm-hmm.
So, ironically, he come to me and said, could you find me an agent out west? So I did. I found him an agent that I had done a little bit with in BC. And turns out, when I phoned her, she said, oh my goodness, we've been looking for this person for years.
Huh.
Basically, the town of Coquitlam grew up around this piece of land, and they couldn't find the owner.
Wow.
Because he was pretty off the grid kind of thing, like he was an old-timer. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, I think in their mind they thought it was going to be worth about 50 or 60,000. They said that the guy owed them $4,000, the two brothers.
Right.
But they instead gave him this piece of land. Well, I think, if memory serves me, it brought 400 or 450,000.
Wow.
So, it was kind of neat to hook up with someone out there. I have agents in Alberta and Saskatchewan I've done business with, and Manitoba.
Yeah.
More so in the western provinces than the east, but
Right.
You do meet up, and I have quite a few in Western Ontario that I work back and forth with. Because lots of times people just scare them away and they come down here.
Yeah.
Because the prices out west of Toronto are outrageous compared to here.
Yeah, they're high for sure.
Yeah.
So, what would you say marketing wise? Like, what's a thing for you, or what's a big thing for you marketing with this?
It's a bit. I mean, it's been a transition. There's far more social media now than there used to be, and it was getting your head around the ad in the Western paper, the Ontario Farmer, and now it's transitioned into Facebook. And like, I've got people following me on Facebook from Australia, Britain, all over Europe.
Yeah.
So I think for me the key has been, our prices have been very good compared to other parts of the world.
Right.
So, I want a buyer to come here and think that they're buying a deal.
Right.
So if someone's used to pay here for $5,000 or $6,000 an acre, that's a much easier sale than it is if someone's used to paying $1,000 an acre and now I'm trying to get them to pay $6,000 an acre.
Yep.
So I found that if you can, and for me, I find and I'm still pretty new at it, but with social media and that, Facebook especially, the more of those like-minded groups you can interact with, comment, and put your product in front of, the more you get buyers from that.
Yep.
And it's getting to be less so the ad in the paper, I think the ad in the paper is more important for me to get the listings.
Right. You're getting local farmers who want to sell their home with you, but to actually attract the buyers, it's from online.
Yeah, and I went through a phase. If you had asked me that question 3 or 4 years ago, I would have said that I was very anti-paper, but I think I've come to the realization that I always thought that paper was dead because, 5 out of 6 leads you get come off the email.
Right.
But I think people still go to that paper and they look at it, but the thing is then they go to the website.
Right.
So I think it's still a jumping off point.
Yeah.
But, for us, certainly our web-based marketing is huge. And word of mouth, like I said, it's getting the listings is more of a handshake and like I'm working on a deal right now with a farm, and I've known the guy for years, but it's kind of one of those things, out of sight, out of mind, and he's never asked me to do anything before, but back in October, I went to a farm sale one day, and I bumped into him, we talked, and he said, geez, if you ever get a buyer, let me know, and a week later, I phoned him and said, I've got a buyer, can I show it, and,
Yeah, you put it together.
Yeah, and so we've got a conditional offer on that, and then we're going to list the backup place, and then he's now gone and bought a place, and it's funny, that's, I think, where my non-farm business comes from. Like, for example, the offer that we have in place right now for the guy selling the farm, he actually, unfortunately, he fell in love with one of those listings on the internet that we don't like to see.
Yeah.
Something about the guys or something.
Yeah.
But anyways, I went in and, I said, I'm not going to prejudge. I went and I phoned them and they said, yeah, we'll cooperate with you. And I showed it. But then last night we put the deal together and they said, we're needing to move down south a bit. Could you help us on that end? So, that's a good part of, the marketing, right? Like that's, I think, why I still have any residential business is these farmers, when they leave the farm, they go buy a house. So
you're not actively, you're not actively trying to get that residential business. It just comes as a default from doing the farms.
Yeah, it's funny, and it could be partly my demeanor, but I mean, when I go into a farm appointment, I walk in there thinking that there's a 7 out of 10 chance that I'm getting this, maybe even 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
But it's funny, if on the off chance I get called in town and I go in against some of the big boys in town and big girls in town that do all the, business, I go in there thinking like lightning would have to strike for me to get something. So, I mean, maybe I'm partly my own worst enemy, but, yes, when that's how I tend to get, it's either repeat business that gets me into town or someone's come into town and, they're going in from the farm to town. So that's kind of where that part of the business comes from. And I think that's where we utilize the team the most is in that in-town market, because I found very quickly the farm market, if you couldn't walk and talk the market, the language, then they weren't going to get anything done.
Yeah. They'll smell you coming, so if they know.
And it's funny, when I'm at a farm sale or a livestock sale and a realtor comes in, it's funny how the reaction, like people look at it and go, you don't belong here. You must have a farm listing or something.
Yeah.
You don't want us to buy.
Yeah.
But I've always been lucky. I found my business came when I wasn't looking for it.
Right.
When I, and like I said, I've known lots of agents that have done very, very well prospecting for it, but just a quick little side note, there was the local stockyard, it shut down in 2003, and my business went down 30% that year.
Wow.
What it was every Friday, people would think that I was out there just hiding from work and just mingling, but there would be like an unofficial lineup. People would kind of mosey over and they'd sit down beside you and they'd say, come see me on Thursday. I don't want anyone to know. And so when that place closed down, those farmers, when they're at home, when I go into their place, they're busy. It's like me walking in right now trying to list a house with you. When you're doing your interview, you're going to say, well, I'm busy right now. I don't want to talk to you. Yeah. And they were the same way. When you go to their house, they'd hardly give me the time of day. So I really struggled for a couple years to find another place where farmers congregated and drank coffee and socialized.
So it wasn't just Tim Hortons then, or?
No, like that's a couple they dispersed, but like that stockyards, it was like a mecca for them,
Yeah.
So it's, and it's once you kind of identify that, but I was, for the first year after the place closed, I was pretty shell-shocked. Like my business didn't come nearly as easy as it used to.
Mm-hmm.
But now, you find a few other outlets where you go and
you're adapting,
and you get it back again.
So, if you were to redo your business from scratch 20 years ago, and if you were to give yourself advice in the future, what would you change, or what would you do? Would you do it all the same, or what would you do differently?
I would constantly remind myself that it's a people business and it's a face-to-face business. What I'm doing, and it was the same back then. The old timers, if you will, in those days would look at you and say, you can't get a signature on the phone.
Yeah.
You got to see these people. And, and I think that's my biggest challenge was overcoming confidence issues. Like I was really afraid of people when I got into this business. Like I deathly afraid of the word no. And I find that if you act as an educator and a facilitator to these people, they will flock to you,
Yeah.
And I don't think I would change a lot, other than I would I've gone through the peaks and valleys. I guess the biggest thing, back to my mentor, John, he used to tell me, to use a farming analogy, he said, like, most realtors, if you were to do a 12-month cycle, January, February, and March, they're starving for business. And they get back to the basics and they do all the things that make you business. And then April, May, June, July, August, you're picking the fruit from those things you did back in the winter. And so the money's flowing and you're busy and you're doing all kinds of actual real estate work. And then as you near Christmas again, it's petering out. And like, so what he used to say is you'd have to plant a seed every day.
Yeah.
Right? So the moment that you stop prospecting, and like for me, I used to go and sit in the mall because I hated cold calling. I would sit in the mall with the guy back in those days, and I'd get to know them, and they'd ask for 15 or 20 cards a week from me. They'd have stacks of my cards, and every Monday they'd call me and say, "We're out. Get me some more." And I said, "What are you guys doing? Are you throwing them at people?" Like, but they would approach people. If I sat there and do it, they'd think I was sleazy. But they would say to someone sitting in the mall, "You thinking of buying a house? Call my agent. His name's Kevin. He's good."
Yeah.
And it was the same with the farms, right? I have a whole army of people now that when anyone even breathes the word listing or selling or buying, or like, they're on me. They're like, "Call this person. I've told them about you, and you need to call them today."
Yeah.
So that for me was, cultivating those relationships are paramount, I think, in your beginning of your career, because once you use up your friends and your family, they bought and sold for the first time, then you got a long wait until they're ready to do it again. You got to get out there and make some business.
Okay, so we'll wrap up. Always wrap up with the golden nugget. So what's one golden nugget or one piece of advice that you would give to people if they're listening?
I would say I'm sure it translates into residential, but you shouldn't just wait for the phone to ring. Like, you should do something. Like for me, like I said, it was the community areas where we did a lot of fundraising and stuff for different causes over the years, and I think that's important. If you go and join a group or get out and be around the people, and don't be afraid to wear whatever your company's logo is, like, because people love to talk real estate, and the more you can talk to people and show them that you are a professional, I think the more business will come your way. But if you shrink into the corner and don't go and see people and mingle, I think you're going to be in for a long hard go.
Okay, so that's great. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you or check you out or find out what you're doing?
We have a couple of websites, CanadaFarms.com. Yep. Or ChooseTeamAvery.com.
Okay.
Or they can phone us directly at 705-324-2552.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, if anyone has questions about farms or has any deals for Kevin up in the area, be sure to pass them on to him. So yeah, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
I very much appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay.